way earlier. I wanted to actually start uh, at the original plan was like 5:30, and then I thought 6:30 would be better for the second time that I'm doing a chat stream. And then I just wasn't able to sleep today, so that impacted my ability to get ready. Hello, Flo. So it's going to be a bit of a short chat today before we get to the mental health gaming. Hello, Brain Tickles. Thank you for joining me, everybody. So, what I'm going to try to do is last week people had recommendations for like music to listen to and things like that, and I was trying to say things out loud. I'm going to try and get in the habit of putting it up on hold on, I'm also adjusting this so that I can see. There. I'm going to try to put it up on the screen when people recommend things. And also, as you can hopefully see, I've put some of the crisis lines and helplines. They're US based ones because it's mostly our US friends that need help right now. But I would like to put it out there that anybody who wants to suggest something to add to the list of resources, please pop it in the chat and I will add it. And I'll try to keep something like that up whenever we can so that people can access those resources and websites and crisis lines and all of that. So I hope everyone is doing okay this week. I have made some notes on things to talk about, but if people have specific things that they wanted to bring up or anything they want to vent about or anything like that, I can add a bot that will take my commands like posting crisis lines. I will have to figure that out. That would be a great idea. Actually, I'm going to note that down. That way I don't forget for next time. Oh, so you're quiet today because of something in your household yesterday. Well, I'm so sorry you're going through that. I'm glad that you're joining us today. That can be really difficult dealing with stress in your own household because everybody needs a kind of safe space to be themselves and not feel like there's a lot of pressure or stress. And when we don't have that space, it can be extremely difficult. And your home should be that space for you, right? It should be a space that you can feel safe and you can be yourself and you don't have to worry about those things. And I'm so sorry that you don't have that. What are some of the things that you do to help you when your household can't be your safe space? Brain Tickle sending ghost hugs to whoever wants and needs them. Sounds like Flo needs them. Lose yourself in games, which isn't helping, but I'm coping. Sometimes, I mean, all we can do is really just cope. All we can do is try and get through, because a lot of the time when you're dealing with the stress and the things happening, like for example, things happening in your household and there's not much that you can do about it, sometimes all we can do is just try and be kind to ourselves while we ride it out. So that's not a bad thing. And we talked before about how games can be a safe space and can actually be quite useful. I bet you're probably playing a lot of Stardew. I know you mentioned before that that's a safe space for you. I'm going to try to make my screen here a bit smaller so I can see. I'm trying to pay attention because I noticed last week I totally forgot to pay attention to when Twitch is going to start playing ads. And so what we're going to do is if I see an ad pop up, like a thing saying that there's going to be an ad, we're going to kind of hold the main conversation so that anyone who has to endure the ads doesn't miss anything important. You still, Brain Tickle still hasn't gotten that game. Don't. Aww. It is definitely a great game for relaxation. It has its stressful moments, but I always found it peaceful and relaxing. And in particular, like playing it on a phone, like playing the app one, I always found relaxing because it was easily accessible. I didn't have to move. Sometimes I have trouble sitting at computers because of my chronic pain and stuff like that. So being able to play it on an app is definitely a lot easier. And it's pretty much the same game. I think there's some limitations, but it's the same game, just in an app. Well, this might be a good time to talk about, I had noted down ways to calm our minds when our minds are being negative or when we have a lot going on, a lot stressing us out. One of my favorite ways is meditation, which I did talk a little bit about last week, where I have a specific place I go to in my head, that tree by the river and stuff like that, that I meditate and take myself to when I need to calm myself. And some other things like, I mean, meditation isn't the only way, and sometimes you can achieve this kind of calm state in your own mind by doing things like exercise or yoga. Yoga is a form of meditation, and it allows you to connect with your body and possibly get out of your head, which can be very useful. There's some yoga positions that I find actually make it really easy to get yourself into a calm state of mind. The child pose in particular, I had to get used to that one because when I first started doing it, it felt like I couldn't breathe when I was in the position. So it took some practice to get it down right. And then now it's one that I get into when I need to just shut everything out, because it allows me to kind of bury my face and like relax my body and feel safe. Hi, Butterby. Thank you for joining us. Today's just going to be a short talk because I have not slept and didn't manage to start as early as I wanted to. So I apologize to everybody for that. Hopefully next week I can manage to get here sooner. I was planning, like I'm going to be guaranteed doing this at least every other week. But for now, it seems I'm doing it every week. And we'll figure it out from there. And you won't be on voice for Stardew because you aren't comfortable making noise in the house right now. That's okay. You are really good at using the chat in game. I'm not so good at using in-game chats and stuff. I'm really bad at that. You're good at it. So you'll be able to participate that way. And I'm just glad that you'll be playing and joining us. And that hopefully we can help give you a safe space to escape the stress of your household. These talking streams are really cozy. I'm glad we can give you a cozy atmosphere. Yeah, brain tickles. Oh, and speaking of sleep deprivation, that's a huge part of mental health. If you can obtain sleep, do. Yeah, getting lots of rest is very important, and that can help keep your mind calm and everything like that. Um, but then there's also uh, the issue of if you can't get your mind calm, then you can't sleep. And that's one thing that sometimes I struggle with. Today, my body just didn't want to sleep, and my mind was like, you know what, you're right. I don't want to sleep. And so I just fought myself the entire time. And it always seems like when I manage to get to sleep is like about half an hour before I have to get up. So that doesn't work out well. So we have an ad starting in 15 seconds. So we're going to try to not talk about anything on topic for these next, I don't know how long it plays, couple minutes. I think. I've never actually paid attention to the ads on Twitch where it tells me. Because I only, when I stream, I have, I look at the chat on my phone, and then I just have my one monitor that I use for the actual gaming. And so I don't see these, like, I don't see the, what's it called? Let's see. I don't usually see the stream manager. I follow the chat just by looking on the stream manager on my phone. I don't get to see the whole layout where it tells me when the ads are coming. Yeah, it said there was an ad coming in and it was timing down. But then I know that it usually says an ad is playing and it is not saying an ad is playing. Um, oh, there we go. Yeah, so with Twitch and these ads, it sets it up that you have to choose between having pre-roll ads or ad breaks. So, in order to make sure that people feel comfortable actually entering the stream and don't want to immediately leave because they're faced with an ad, I just set it up for a 1 per hour ad. Plus, it does help. Every little bit helps to support me in doing these streams. So, I mean, there's not a lot from the ads, but there's a nice, like a little bit. It's interesting that the ad just like counted down for me saying it was about to start and then just it waited like another good 30 seconds. Yeah, you'll literally bounce right out of a stream if I immediately get an ad. Yeah, I like if I want to watch a stream or something, I don't want to immediately get an ad. It just makes me not interested in the stream. Um, and so I figured pre-rolls were a good thing to get rid of. I'd rather have people come in and see cuz like if you're popping into a stream, you're popping in to kind of see what they're doing and what the vibe is and everything, and if you'll even want to stay. So if you have to watch an ad to even figure that out, then it makes you not even want to go in. Um, so that's completely understandable, and I wanted to avoid that. There's 1 minute left of the ad. And I mean, with the game streams and stuff like that, people can always just go back and watch the VODs after the fact, um, for anything they missed. So I'm not too concerned when I'm gaming with making sure I'm not talking during the ads. I do appreciate when people in the chat tell me that they're like getting an ad so they can't hear me, because that way I won't address them in the chat when they can't hear me. But yeah, they can always go back and see something if there's some kind of dialogue or something they've missed. what I hate is when it's a text or sort of heavy game and there's an ad coming in, making folks lose a lot of the context. Yeah. Yay, ad break over. So for anyone that couldn't hear because of the ad, we were just talking about ads. Uh, yeah, I hate when the ad, it feels like it's interrupting important things. But yeah, at least with games, people can go back and always watch the stream later and like the recorded video or whatever from the stream and see what they missed. Can be pretty bad. I watch one guy right now and his mod's main job is to tell him that an ad is hitting so he doesn't keep playing through. Yeah, I'm working on getting some mods and stuff like that to help me out, and that'll probably be one thing that I'd like for them to communicate with me is letting me know if there's an ad coming up so that I can avoid saying things that people won't be able to hear or doing specific plot things. Because, like, if I'm playing Mass Effect, for example, there's a lot of, like, dialogue heavy stuff or reading and stuff, and I want people to be able to actually hear that. Even though I have the, like, subtitles on and it's text and everything like that, but not everybody can, might be able to read that. Like I've talked about, with ADHD and stuff like that, sometimes it's very difficult to focus on text, and that's part of why I always read it out loud when I'm gaming and things. And so yeah, if I know an ad's coming up, then I'll just run around and look at stuff. You know, I'll look at some scenery and avoid saying important things or doing important things that people would miss out on. But yeah, so I was talking about ways to calm your mind when your mind is being difficult. And I mean, several times now we've talked about the lists, doing things to create the good chemicals, but then there's also just allowing yourself to clear your mind and calm your mind, which I know a lot of people have difficulty with. If you've ever like looked into meditation, for example, there's a lot of talk about clearing your mind. And people will often think, well, I can't meditate because I can't clear my mind. It's really difficult. And they don't realize that it's actually very difficult for everybody. Even people who have meditated for years have difficulty clearing their mind. The point is to just like make the attempt and to know the things that you can do to help yourself get to that point. And you might not. Like I said, lots of people who have meditated for years and use meditation on a regular basis could very well not be able to clear their mind for a while. And it's just trying to do the meditation and allowing yourself to have those moments of at least attempted peace that's important. Yeah, the process of attempting can be meditative in itself. Yeah, that's and the thing is, meditation doesn't always have to be like an empty mind. I do a lot of meditation where I'm meditating on topics. If I can't completely clear my mind of like the stressful and negative thoughts, I'll often find like a piece of poetry or a proverb or something like that, and I'll reflect on that, and I'll think about the meaning and what it means to me, and what I can do with this information and stuff, and I'll think on that and allow myself to focus on that instead of like my brain being all over the place with like all these other things happening. And no, Flo, you are one of the smartest people that I know, so none of that shit. I know it sucks though to feel dumb. I think that's something when people refer to themselves as dumb, it's never dumb people that actually call themselves dumb. It's well, I shouldn't say never. And also, I want to clarify that, like, dumb doesn't necessarily mean a lack of intelligence, even. But I'm talking about people who are just like it's hard to use phrasing with that because I don't like the words like dumb and stupid, stuff like that, because it makes you think that like a lack of intelligence, which I don't think anybody has a lack of intelligence, um, is you like that a lack of a certain kind of intelligence is bad. And um, the only time that's bad is when people are like specifically ignorant, like MAGA people. Ah, yes, doing calming activities can also be meditative. Yeah, and that also helps with the fact that, like, for example, people with ADHD, I'll use that example a lot because I have ADHD. You fidget a lot, right? And it can be very difficult to stay still for meditation, and to focus the mind. But if you have something that you're doing, like an activity that is simple and repetitive and um, things like that, it can be very meditative. I do that with I used to knit. I also sew, um, and I do find those things very relaxing until they're not. And then it also gives you like a sense of being productive, because I, with my anxiety as well as my ADHD, will often feel like I'm wasting time, and that's something that has pulled me out of meditation before, is feeling like I'm wasting time instead of doing something productive. I actually sometimes I have trouble gaming because I'll think, hey, I should be doing this thing that I have to do or completing this project or whatever. And even though doing my gaming is very important to me and keeping that schedule is very important to me, um, I still will like think I should be doing all these other things and it'll be very distracting for me. Um, so being productive and realizing something is productive, like, hey, I'm sewing something, I'm going to have an end product, or I'm going to, at the very least, improve my sewing skills by doing this. And you get to meditate and pull your mind out of um, the rut it might be in. I'm laughing at Brain Tickle's comment about the person saying, why let me be bimbo? Or why let me bimbo? That's another thing, is it's therapeutic to like have friends and loved ones, partners and things that allow you to be a bimbo. Being able to like let yourself do stupid things. So like I talk about not liking the term stupid and dumb and all that, but the like getting to be silly and be ridiculous and stuff around people is a very lovely feeling. On the other end of that, poor Flo, feeling like the people there make you feel like you're stupid, and that's no good. Because people especially that are around you on a regular basis shouldn't be making you feel that way, and you should feel comfortable enough, you should be able to feel comfortable enough if you're living with people and things to discuss that. And that's not a very um safe environment to be in. And yeah, silliness is a human right. Hopefully Flo can find resolutions to having a better space. Um, Obviously, that's a lot easier said than done, but hopefully, Flo, you're able to either solve the problems that make you feel that way, or just find a space of your own. Lotto win, buy compound, build commune. I always wanted to, my original dream was to buy land and have a commune, but there's, I don't feel like I could ethically own land, because the land in Canada and stuff, it does not belong to anyone but the Indigenous peoples. So I don't feel right necessarily buying, like, how do I word it? Buying land that's been built and, like, I can't think of a better word, but like processed. Um, which is why if I buy land one day, it's going to be, there's a bunch of land like Northern Ontario that is the type of land that you can't build on legally. Like, you can buy the land, but you're not supposed to build like permanent buildings or anything on it. Uh, Anything that you have on there is supposed to be temporary, and you're also not allowed to cut down a lot of trees or anything like that, but you can grow vegetables and all of that. So I wanted to get that kind of land and then allow people to come live in temporary spaces there. I've always wanted to build out a bus, a schoolie, so I could travel around, and then I figured I could help people build out vans and things like that, or even set up, sheds with good insulation and heating. And that way people could come to the compound and stay there and have their own little space. That's basically Scooby-Doo. Can I be Velma? Of course. Actually, one thing I really want to do when I'm on the road is go check out haunted places. I don't I don't actually believe in ghosts and things like that, but I do believe in the thrill of ghost hunting. And I know it sounds silly to say that, but the whole, like, for example, I always wanted to get a group of people together, split off into pairs with walkie-talkies, and walk around some really large cemeteries. I used to live in St. John, New Brunswick for a little bit, and they have some big cemeteries there that have really old graves and a lot of trees. So if you're walking around at night, like in your peripherals and stuff, you'll see things. You'll think you'll see people walking amongst the trees and stuff, but it's just like a trick of the light and everything. And I thought it would be so much fun to have people do that. And then the walkie-talkies would add to it, because you would be seeing things out of the corner of your eyes, and then that would make you communicate with the other people. Hey, I think I just saw a person, which would make their imagination go crazier, and they would start to see more things, and it would be a lot of fun. My wife read me a thing recently that said, I know ghosts either aren't real or are harmless, because if ghosts could hurt people, there'd be no more white people. Yeah. That's the thing is, if ghosts could really do stuff, like if they were harmful, I feel like we'd be much more aware, and there would be a lot more happening. Um, I like, for my own like mental health, I like dabbling in some things. Like, I've played around with some witchcraft stuff. I've um like, I like using Ouija boards and shit like that. Even though I don't actually fully believe that that's doing anything, it still helps me feel better. And And then Flo believes in ghosts and says ghosts and spirits aren't necessarily people. Places are mostly haunted by strong feelings. That's a thing though, is humans are energy. Every living thing is energy, and that energy has to go places. And I don't know if we necessarily understand everything. Like, there's a lot to be understood. So, some sci fi shows and stuff have touched on the idea that ghosts are actually residual energy from people being in areas. And that makes me wonder if, maybe sometimes when people see ghosts, it's because somebody, maybe like a ghost you always see going down a hallway, maybe a person walked down that hallway like a million times in their lifespan, and it left like some kind of residual energy that we don't understand yet. And that's something that we're able to somewhat perceive. And that's always what the cats and dogs are looking at when we when they're looking at nothing and they're spooking us. We think that they may have seen old glow sticks left up or something like that. The cabin you were in was very haunted. But yeah, I playing around with some of the spiritual stuff in general. Like, I'm not somebody who's religious or believes in ghosts and stuff like that, but I do believe in using those things as tools for your own mental health, which fits into today. um, so I'm somebody who's lost a lot of people. Um, I talk to people about grief a lot. Um, and grief doesn't necessarily always mean like actually somebody passing away. Grief can mean you can grieve the loss of a future that you once had that don't have anymore. And that's something that disabled people, for example, have to deal with a lot, is you have to realize like, okay, well, because I have this disability, it is actually not going to be possible to achieve this thing that I always wanted. And I'm going to have to grieve that, and I'm going to have to choose a different future. But that's, we can discuss that further another time. But for dealing with like people passing away, it can be very difficult because we very rarely actually get any kind of closure. And no matter how much we know someone is going to pass or have time to prep or anything like that, doesn't matter if the person passed away slowly over a period of years or if they died suddenly, we are never prepared for that and always end up having some kind of need for closure. So I like things like little rituals that you can do to send them messages, or, I don't believe in afterlife, but sometimes just choosing to believe in an afterlife for a minute so that I can imagine that they're happy, that they're looking at me and seeing the things that I want them to see. When you have those moments where you're like, oh, I wish this person was here to see me achieve this or whatever. Just believing for a moment that it's possible can be very therapeutic. One of the things that helps me deal with the loss of my kitties that passed away a couple years ago is thinking that they finally got to meet my dog, Susie Q, that had passed away and they never got to meet. And also that they would be meeting my Zeta, and that he would be taking care of them, because my Zeta is one of my favorite people ever and one of my heroes. So thinking that my Zeta is taking care of them makes me feel a lot better. And I've done grief meditations um, through some therapists and stuff, where you sit and you meditate and you imagine that they're there with you and you can feel them and everything like that. And all of that stuff, even though, I know they're not there and stuff like that, still really helps with the feeling of loss and the need for closure. Um, so that's the Ouija board works for that too. Being able to play around with a Ouija board with somebody, and usually with a Ouija board, you have another person present with you. So you get the support of the other person. And then you also get to ask questions and feel like you're getting something out of that, which is actually something I learned from my mother a long time ago. 'Cause she pulled out a Ouija board so that we could communicate with my Zeta and Bubby. Your kitties are getting old, so I make sure to pamper them as much as possible. Luigi board. um, with the pampering. So, I went through when my first cat died, of the 3 that died within a year of each other. I went through, I forget what it's called now. Excuse me, because the lack of sleep, my brain fog's kind of bad. It's like preemptive grief. And that can show up with like pampering the animals or people, showing them super extra love. Usually it's with animals, showing them extra love and paying extra attention to them. One thing I used to do with Joey after Jack died was, and it sounds weird, I used to hold his body against my face so that I could feel him breathing and I could hear his organs still working, because I knew one day they were going to stop. And I wanted to know, like, I wanted to remember what it sounded like for him to be alive, and I wanted to remember what it felt like to have that warmth against my face. And I wanted to remind myself with this like physical thing that he was still there. And that is this preemptive grief that we can go through when we know that someone is going to pass soon, or we're worried that we might not even know that, like, with Joey, I had no idea he was going to pass soon. He was only like 8 years old, and 8 or 9, and his passing was a surprise because all of a sudden he got sick, and I found out that he had diabetes, and it got diagnosed way too late to do anything, and the only option was to, unfortunately, put him to sleep. That's a very conscientious pre-grieving ritual. Yeah, when it comes to grief and stuff, I have a lot to say and have practiced a lot, because unfortunately I have dealt with a lot of grief in my life. When I've done the math, there's about one close person. Like, it doesn't exactly happen in this pattern, but there's at least one close person per year I've been alive. It usually is within a year or two that somebody will pass away. Yeah, that's I always felt like I was cursed with that. So ever since I was young, that was the thing, is people close to me. Down to like my favorite teacher in grade 6 died. He had diabetes, and during the Christmas break, he passed away. And my mom did not do good with telling me either, because I just remember she called me down. She'd gotten a call from the school, and she just asked me, "So who's your favorite teacher?" And I said, well, Mr. Edwards. And she's like, oh, well, sit down. Not a good way to let your kid know that their favorite teacher passed away. Also, I'm very sorry if this is triggering to anybody. Please let me know if talking about death is a triggering thing. Uh, it's very, people don't want to talk about it. Yeah, I've had some traumatic things with how I was told about um, people and animals passing away. Um, I've had toxic people use the passing of animals and things like that to hurt me. All kinds of stuff like that. So I've dealt with that a lot, where there was a lot of people that passed away, and that's why I ended up getting into the funeral industry eventually, because I wanted to be there for the people that had lost someone. And the best way to put it is because I was on the other end of the phone when people would call because somebody passed away. And I would be the one that would arrange for their loved ones to get picked up and cared for. And I would talk them through the steps that they had to go through next. And the best way to put it is that I got to be there for people during the worst day of their lives. Because even if it doesn't end up actually being the worst day of their lives, in that moment, for them, that is the worst day of their lives. And it's not talked about enough. People don't talk about death. And that's a problem, because then we're not prepared in any way. If we don't talk about death, then it becomes something that surprises us. And it's something that is inevitable and happens. It's everywhere. We're surrounded by it. It's something, like most people are going to lose someone close to them in their lifetime. And everyone is going to eventually pass away. So we have this, because we don't want to have to deal with that. We don't like thinking about mortality. We want to pretend like it's not happening. Even me, with all of my experience in death, when it came to my cats, instead of planning what to do when they passed away, I just didn't want to think about it and pretended like it wasn't going to happen. And it was very difficult for me. What I did do is I knew better than to completely ignore it. So I made some of the hard decisions first, because I didn't want to have to leave that for myself. And I really recommend that for anyone, is think of the hard decisions that you'll have to make in the moment. Because once it happens, then there's, time continues and you have to keep going with whatever's happening, right? So once somebody passes away, you now have to make decisions and you're put on the spot. So if you have a loved one or something and they pass away, you're going to have to decide if you're going with a funeral home. Like, you're going to have a funeral home take them into their care, or if you're going to be donating them to something. Like here in Toronto, we have the University of Toronto programs. And then from there, you have to think cremation or burial. And you're going to have to think if you want some kind of service. So funeral services can usually wait. Like, I try to explain that to people. You don't even have to, you don't have to do a visitation or anything. If you want to do a funeral service a year later instead of anywhere near when the person passes, you can do that. You can wait that length of time. You don't need to have it be right when the person is buried or right when they're cremated. You can handle that and then do a memorial and celebrate what their life was when everybody's ready and everybody can get together, and when it isn't something that just completely blindsided people or whatever. But the immediate decisions, for example, whether cremation or burial, should be figured out beforehand. Because then you get into a point of, well, if you're still trying to figure it out and you need more time, that's fine. The funeral home will hold your loved one in storage. But that comes with fees. I enjoyed being in the funeral industry to be there for people. I hated how it took advantage of people. And one of the things is storage fees. So storage fees are necessary to a point because, I mean, you can't just take up all the space. Storage Wars Funeral Home Edition must be wild. Says Flo. Yeah, so you can't just take up all of the space, because then nobody would have space to put their loved ones. And obviously there's certain like upkeep and stuff to the space. So that needs to be taken into consideration. But funeral industry in general does kind of take advantage. And you see it a lot where they push things like, oh, if you want to show respect to your loved one that passed away, then you should have this big funeral service. No, funeral services and memorials are for the living. Let's be clear. They're for the living. The person has passed away. They're not there. And I mean, yeah, like everybody has different religious beliefs, and like I'm Jewish, and technically the belief that goes with it is until the person's buried, like they're still there with the body and present. But you don't need to have, even in that case, like they're not sitting there like judging the funeral service on to see how respectful you are because of, did you show up and were you crying and was it long enough and did you buy the fancy flowers? And no, that's not the case. They don't care. And I'm pretty sure anyone's loved ones would want you to be taking care of yourself, would want you to be thinking about yourself. And brain tickles. Wow, these flowers are crap. My funeral sucks. Took the fun right out of funeral. Yeah, like that's not like people aren't judging you for that. And I think that's another thing that, like, if people talked about death more, that would be something I should do, like a whole talk on death. Those because people think that they need to attend these things to show respect and stuff, and that can actually really stress people out. Because maybe you don't feel like you can go to a funeral service because you're not up for it. Maybe you physically like are going to struggle to go, and emotionally maybe it's not something that you think you can deal with in that moment, and you want to grieve at home. And you shouldn't feel ashamed of how you need to grieve. As myself and many of my friends are entering middle age, myself and my partner, both of us who have had to deal with parents, grandparents passing away, are both kind of nudging our friend circle to be prepared for this. You definitely don't want to be blindsided by it. Yeah, exactly. That's why everybody should talk about these things. Everybody should talk about what their preferences are. People leaving instructions for your loved ones on what you would prefer, leaving notes for them so that they can have some closure. Those are important. Thinking about the people that you're going to leave behind if you pass away is important. Also can provide you a lot of peace when you realize that you've come to the end of your journey. Then you'll know, well, I've written these notes to specifically go to people I care about. I've made sure they know what I want. I've made sure this is all taken care of. And that can mean a lot for them. That and prearrangements. Prearrangements are great. You do have to be a little bit careful with them, but setting up prearrangements are great for a couple of reasons. One, it takes the stress off of your loved one. You can set up prearrangements with a funeral home, and that way they just call the funeral home that you can have a card in your wallet, you can put it in your will, you can have it given to your loved ones that are handling your healthcare and stuff, and they'll know who to call, And then the funeral director will sit down with those family members and go, okay, well, this is the service that your loved one planned out for themselves. And do you want to change anything? And they can change whatever they want. And then they can just go ahead. There are some fees that will be charged after. Like there's certain fees for burials and stuff that are charged after the fact. But if you do pre-arrangements, you can pay on a payment plan, and it's something that won't be affected by inflation. So funeral costs in general will be affected by inflation. But if you pay for pre-arrangements, then that is paid for. So you pay for pre-arrangements. It's going to stay at the cost of when you got that pre-arrangement, and you're going to pay that off. And then, like I said, there's a few fees that they will have to pay after, which funeral homes should be more transparent about. I have had people be blindsided by the fees after the fact. But for the most part, like it'll get rid of a large chunk of what they need to pay. I don't necessarily feel that going to a service is good for me, but my family would probably be rather cruel to me if I didn't. It's not great. Yeah, and that's the thing is, it's again like nobody talks about death, nobody talks about these things, and instead there's toxic sides of the funeral industry and religion that make you feel like you have to go to these things and that it's important and that you're being disrespectful if you don't. And that's really fucked up because people need to grieve in their own ways, and forcing you to go to a service is really cruel. It's really, I mean, I would argue that it's bordering on abusive. Reminds me of that episode of 6 Feet Under where that one guy drives himself to his own funeral. Wild topic for Mental Health Monday: how to prepare for your own death or the death of a loved one. Yeah. Well, it is something important, and maybe I should do a talk. We should maybe plan a just chatting stream or whatever, where I just go over talking about death. Maybe I should do that more frequently, actually. We can talk about grief. We can talk about preparing for your own passing, preparing for the passing of loved ones. I haven't seen a lot of Midnight Gospel. I saw a couple episodes, I think. Sadder death. Yeah, more people should talk about death, and it honestly would be less scary for everybody if we talked about it more. Part of what makes it so scary is that people don't want to talk about it. I'm already ready for everything. That's good. So yeah, and hello, Winterman? No? I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your username. Hello, though. Ah, Rose. Hello and welcome. Yeah, so I'm sorry that Mental Health Monday got really heavy. I want to usually just focus on mental health techniques and things like that, but today we kind of started talking about grief. And yeah, I'll probably make a day, I think, that we talk about death more. And I've actually had a fascination with it my entire life. So there's lots to talk about. And yeah, it is, I mean, death is a sad thing, but it is like an important part of life. Life can't go on without death. Uh, and we can maybe address that in some of those chatting streams. I really enjoy how different cultures and religions and stuff like see death and address death. Buddhism is something that's very important to me. And I was talking about how I'm not religious, but I like taking parts of religion and spirituality to help with my mental health. And Buddhism is one that I've done that a lot with. Like, I consider myself a Buddhist. Um, and the meditation in Buddhism, the talk about impermanence, the talk about, how life, Buddhists perceive life as suffering. And there's a lot of Buddhist texts that talks about how to lessen your suffering by lessening attachment to things. One of my favorite techniques for meditation, which we were talking about, is you're supposed to imagine a specific image. And my favorite image is the Buddha on his deathbed, for specific reasons, which I guess I'll talk about some other time, because I do have to get ready for our Stardew stream now. But maybe I'll address why I use that image next time we talk about it, and we'll talk more about death in the future. And Bender is great, says I wear Buddha beads. My mom got me a necklace. Yeah, and even breathing with because to help me breathe, you're supposed to think about saying Buddha. So the inhale is the Bud, and then is the exhale. So it helps me with my breathing when I meditate and stuff. Hi, Gwen. Yeah, you have to be present in the moment. And it just a quick before we end for the day for the chat. People think that Buddhist monks don't cry, and they do. Buddhist monks still cry when they lose someone. They still deal with loss and sadness, but they practice feeling those emotions, learning from those emotions, and letting them pass by. They understand that death is a necessity of life, and they understand it is something that will happen. And they also understand that sadness is a thing you're going to feel with these things. And that's okay. You have to let yourself feel it, and then you let it pass. You let it move through you, and you can move on from there. People tend to focus on the sadness. And don't let it move through them, and instead keep it inside of them. And that's where we end up fighting with grief for a lot longer than we necessarily have to. But Buddhist monks are more disciplined. All right, well, why do people think that? I've never heard that. I constantly have heard that when I've studied with Buddhism, is people talking about how Buddhist monks don't feel emotions. And I'm like, that is not even, nope. Happiness is one they feel quite often. And sadness, they feel all the time. They just don't let it overwhelm everything. They don't, wallow in that sadness. They let it move through them. Okay, well, this has been a good chat. And I think I've been trying to decide on another topic to possibly stream more than one just chat a week. Um, so I had been thinking about, doing Mental Health Mondays and then trying to think about what else I could chat about. So we might just start one up where I talk about death. So that probably won't be an every week thing. Maybe I'll do one every 2 weeks or every month or something, where we'll talk about death. And also, it can be the same idea as a mental health space where we can have people talk about their experiences and look for support. But yeah, so thank you for joining me, everybody. In a little bit, I just need a little bit of time to set up. We're going to be streaming Stardew Valley. So continuing Mental Health Monday with Stardew Valley, a nice relaxing space. And there'll be crowd control on so you can participate on the farm and help make it the best farm. And we can all have a peaceful end of the night in Stardew Valley. So I will see everyone hopefully in Stardew Valley. And if not, then you can check thank you for sending the love. You can check my stream schedule, my Steam schedule. Talking is not my strong suit tonight because of the lack of sleep. Thank you for all the love. Wednesday is Divinity Original Sin, and Thursday is Witcher 2. And yeah, check my schedule. Thank you for joining me, everybody. I'll see you next time.